In the playoffs, Indianapolis Colts. We have all but kind of putting a fork in the Indianapolis Colts, right? Once they brought back Anthony Richardson after benching Joe Flacco, I said, hey, their season's pretty much done. Stop talking about playoffs with them. They did drop another game, moving them to 5-7 on the season. But the reason that we're talking about the Indianapolis Colts in playoffs right now is because the Houston Texans failed to beat the Tennessee Titans in a huge divisional game. A divisional game that could have all locked up the playoff picture for the Houston Texans. Now, the Houston Texans still are 7-5 on the season, and the Colts are at 5-7. The Texans do hold a 2.5 game favorite over the Indianapolis Colts due to tiebreakers. But guys, is the Indianapolis Colts season officially done? Can the Indianapolis Colts come back and make a playoff push? Like I said, the Colts benched Anthony Richardson earlier this season because they said, and I quote, Joe Flacco gave them the best chance to make the playoffs. Insert a 2-game losing streak. Insert Anthony Richardson back on the starting lineup. Joe Flacco then got benched for Anthony Richardson. In Richardson's first game back, he led the Colts. That's right, he led. He put them on his injured shoulder, lowered it into the end zone, and they beat the New York Football Jets. Then they welcomed Detroit Lions into town. And then Anthony Richardson shows the true colors that Anthony Richardson is. He went 11 for 28 for 172 yards versus the Detroit Lions. Granted, the Detroit Lions have been playing very, very good defense as of right now. 10 quarters in a row, they have not allowed a touchdown. If the Colts could have punched in the football into the end zone twice, we could have maybe had a totally different game instead of settling for field goals. But it is what it is. Guys, the Colts have dropped 4 of their last 5, including a 3-game losing streak to the Texans, Vikings, and Bills. All very, very good teams. All very, very good playoff teams. But still, 3-game losing streak sucks. When you look at the Colts' schedule moving forward, they're at the Patriots, a pretty good team, right? They put 15 points up on the Miami Dolphins in the fourth quarter. They've beaten the Bengals. They have battled other teams, right? The Denver Broncos, a playoff-bound team, 7-5. Might be a top 5 team in this week's power rankings. Slow it down. Tennessee Titans, cannot sleep on them, right? And then they're at the New York Giants, and then they play the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm sorry. There are 7 teams in the playoff picture in the AFC, right? Most of those 7 teams are locked. But then there are teams on the outside looking in, right? There's the Miami Dolphins that still have a shot. The Cincinnati Bengals still have a shot. The New York Jets still have a shot. And the Tennessee Titans still have a shot. Out of those 4 or 5 teams, the Indianapolis Colts possess the best chance to make the playoffs, sitting at 20%. But guys, is the Indianapolis Colts season done? Can they make the playoffs? I honestly cannot believe that we're asking this. I cannot believe that somebody, Frank, wanted me to talk about his Indianapolis Colts. Can they make the playoffs? No, Frank. The Indianapolis Colts cannot make the playoffs. The Indianapolis Colts should be battling for a top overall pick. Not worried about the playoffs, not worried about beating the Titans, not worried about beating the Jaguars, not worried about beating anybody. Playing bad against the Lions was a blessing in disguise. Maybe, just maybe, Anthony Richardson be like, maybe we should just tank it up for the rest of the season. Maybe, just maybe, we should not worry about playing good football anymore. Guys, the Indianapolis Colts, for some reason, they battle everybody that they play. They never just get really blown out. And the last 3 or 4 years when I've been following the Colts heavy, when I've been here in like Indiana, they really never get blown out. Let's look at it this year. Week number 1, 29-27. Week 2, 16-10. Week 3, 21-16. 27-24, 37-34, 20-17, 16-10, 23-20, 21-13, 20-10, 28-27, 24-6. This was their worst loss of the season to the Detroit Lions, 24-6, and it's still only a 3-score game. Like, the Colts are a team that's consistently battling game after game, week after week, and at some point the ball is going to bounce their way, right? At some point, the ball is going to bounce their way. It's just not going to be this season, Frank. Your Indianapolis Colts are not playoff bound. As my man Mark D says, put a fork in them. They're done. Put them on the plate. Let's eat them up. Let's eat us some horse ass. Because the Colts are not playoff bound, guys. What do you guys think? Are the Indianapolis Colts playoff bound? Can the Indianapolis Colts make it into the playoffs? Mark D says, I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the South. Baker is balling and their coaching got good D. They play well against Kansas City and Detroit. I agree with you, Mark. Are you hauling corn liquor? Jay says the Colts have a good foundation. They're missing pieces. Great core, but missing playmakers. They need to draft well and maybe bring in some veterans. This year ain't happening, but they are on the verge of having a very nice squad. Just missing too many vital pieces on their offense and defense. And Jay, I can say for the last 3 years, they have been missing those vital pieces, right? For the last 2 seasons, I thought the Indianapolis Colts were going to finally have a breakthrough, right? Finally have a breakthrough and win the division and make the playoffs. Last year, actually had them winning the AFC South. I would have been right if old Trey Sherman would have caught the ball and they would have beaten the Texans that final game of the season, but it wasn't meant to be. The year before that, when they had Carson Wentz as their quarterback, I was like, okay, maybe Carson Wentz can come in and get a little bit of that mojo back. He was a complete dumpster fire and they're a complete shit show. The Colts have been missing vital pieces for the last 3 seasons. Like at some point, you have to just realize we're tired of being mediocre. Yes, I understand we have Michael Pittman Jr. I understand we have Jonathan Taylor. I understand that we have, who is that big lineman? Let me look it up. Quentin Nelson, right? I understand that we have Alex Pierce. I understand we have DeForest Buckner. Maybe those guys would be served elsewhere and we get a first-round draft pick for them or a second or a third-round pick. Maybe, just maybe, it is time to totally blow it up and totally rebuild because these pieces that you've had for a long time, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., Quentin Nelson, DeForest Buckner, they are carrying us to be just good enough to not to be able to really push over to be great or be down below. The vital pieces are missing because of these 5 or 6 players. Let's just be honest. And Blackman. I forgot about Julian Blackman. Pretty good safety, right? If you could just, in your heart, understand it is a business. In your heart, understand like, hey, maybe we just got to move on from these guys like they did Peyton. Right? If they wouldn't have ever moved on from Peyton, they would never have drafted Andrew Luck. Of course, Andrew Luck didn't really, he was a great quarterback. He probably could have done really good things and like if he would have stayed for more than 5 years or whatever it was. But sometimes you just got to cut the heartstrings and let it go. You got to be the bigger person and move on. Derek says people had them too high to begin the season with. And I was probably one of those people, honestly. Anthony Richardson coming into his second season. Did he get better in the offseason? I thought he would have gotten better, right? Brought in Joe Flacco as a backup, not to start, but to be a backup and mentor this young guy. JT finally got his deal. Michael Pittman Jr. was finally healthy. I was like, okay, Colts could get 10 wins, right? Dethrone the Houston Texans. I was one of those people, Derek, that I was high on the Colts. But damn it, they pissed me off. Man, the Colts pissed me off. Josh Olson says Colts won't make the playoffs, but the Dolphins still can, and they would be dangerous as a wild card team. So, Josh, if the Miami Dolphins were to make the playoffs, they would have to win out, right? And if they would make it into a 7th seed, they would be playing a 2nd seed in the Kansas City Chiefs or the Buffalo Bills. If my memory serves me correctly, the Miami Dolphins only have like a 7% chance to make the playoffs. The Indianapolis Colts are sitting at 20%. It would be a great story. Tua comes back from injury, leads them to 7 straight wins, make it into the playoffs, and then they upset the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, in the first round at Arrowhead Stadium, a rematch from the Ice Bowl from last season. It would be a great story. It would be a great story. But I don't see it happen. I do not see it happen. I would have more faith than the Bengals to make the playoffs than I do the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are too much of a head case, right? Tyreek Hill is hurting himself on end zone celebrations. Like, why? They just lost another defensive player. What was his name? For a torn pec. Like, the Dolphins are in a world of hurt. John says, no, Bucks. If a fraud had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass when he hops. Colts will be in the playoffs next season. Colts will not be in the playoffs next season. I don't think the Colts will make it into the playoffs. Not this year or next year. But every frog does has its day, right, John?